All right, Paradise Lost, Freedom, Pride, and the Architecture of Being. So John Milton wrote this book, right? And a lot of people mistake this story for being about the fall of man. That's only the surface level idea of it. If you go into this book, you can see it's a narrative that describes nothing less than the moral architecture of existence itself. It asks why evil exists, whether freedom can remain meaningful if obedience is guaranteed, and whether rebellion can ever produce genuine liberation, or whether it merely fashions a more elaborate prison under a different name. And so the poem opens not in Eden, but in hell, after the war in heaven has already been lost, right? Milton is less interested in the mechanics of rebellion. He's more into the psychology of it. And Satan has already failed in this plot. So the question is not whether he can defeat God, but whether he can preserve his own identity after discovering that his highest ambition has collapsed into catastrophe. This is why Satan remains one of literature's most compelling figures, because he's not simply charismatic, and he's not just deceptive. He possesses the uniquely human ability to reinterpret reality until every failure becomes evidence of hidden success. Rather than allowing defeat to humble him, he transformed it into a new mythology about himself. Hell ceases to be punishment and becomes a kingdom. Exile becomes independence. Pride slowly acquires the appearance of freedom. One of Milton's main insights is that Satan rarely tells outright lies. Instead, he rearranges truth until it serves his self-conception. He demonstrates that evil is not always going to be something that starts with outright cruelty. It begins with the refusal to see oneself accurately. Long before Satan corrupts Adam and Eve, he had already corrupted the narrative through which he understands his own existence. And in the same sense, hell is not fundamentally location, it's a state of perception. Satan himself says that the mind is capable of making a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. A heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. And throughout the poem, this becomes increasingly literal. So every place he enters slowly conforms to the condition of his own consciousness. He cannot discover peace because he carries the principle of unrest within himself. He mistakes perpetual opposition for genuine freedom. And he's unable to recognize that defying oneself exclusively against authority leaves one forever dependent upon the authority one claims to reject. So against Satan stands not merely God, but an entirely different conception of freedom. And modern readers will often struggle with Milton's God because contemporary literature will frequently equate freedom with the absence of limitation, right? Milton proposes almost like the opposite idea. Freedom is not the ability to choose arbitrarily. It is the capacity to align oneself willingly with reality as it truly is. A musician experiences freedom not by ignoring harmony, but by mastering it. A mathematician is not liberated by rejecting mathematics, but by understanding it deeply enough to create within its structure. Likewise, Milton imagines moral freedom as flourishing within the order of creation rather than escaping it. And so Adam and Eve will therefore occupy a position neither wholly divine nor wholly fallen, right? They are being suspended between innocence and experience. Their tragedy is not that they seek knowledge. The desire to know is profoundly human on the flip side of that, and their tragedy lies in believing wisdom can be seized independently of the relationships that make wisdom possible. So Eve reaches towards transcendence without patience, while Adam chooses love detached from truth. Neither commits an act of monstrous wickedness, instead both distort goods that were already genuine. This subtlety explains why the fall continues to resonate. Evil is not introduced as an alien force entering creation from outside. It emerges through the disordered arrangement of otherwise legitimate desires, right? So love becomes possessiveness, curiosity becomes pride, independence becomes isolation, virtues lose their orientation and thereby transform into their own opposites. So throughout the poem, Milton constructs an immense symbolic geography that mirrors all of these moral realities. Heaven is not simply above, nor hell merely below. Vertical movement itself acquires ethical significance. To ascend is to move forward to participation in truth, right? To descend is to collapse inward upon oneself. Between these realms lies chaos, not evil, but undifferentiated potential, a vast ocean of possibility, like waiting to form. Roll back, roll back, roll back, roll back. So throughout this poem, Milton constructs an immense symbolic geography that will mirror all of these moral realities, right? Heaven is not simply above, nor hell merely below. Vertical movement itself acquires ethical significance. To ascend is to move toward greater participation in truth, and to descend is to collapse inward upon oneself. And between these realities lies chaos, not evil, but undifferentiated potential, right? A vast ocean of possibility awaiting to come into form. Creation itself becomes the continual act of drawing order from possibility, right? While evil never truly creates anything new, it can only deform what already possesses goodness. This distinction may be the poem's deepest claim. Goodness is fundamentally creative. Evil is fundamentally parasitic. Satan cannot construct an alternative cosmos. He can only imitate, corrupt, and diminish one that already exists. His apparent originality is revealed to be dependence disguised as autonomy. And the poem concludes with Adam and Eve leaving Eden. At first glance, this appears entirely tragic, yet Milton refuses to end in despair, right? Paradise is lost geographically, but something greater has become possible historically. Innocence has ended, but the conditions for redemption have begun. Human beings now enter history not as perfect creatures preserved from suffering, but as imperfect creatures capable of transformation through suffering. Milton ultimately suggests that untested innocence is beautiful, but redeemed wisdom is more profound. Throughout the book, I feel like a lot of us will continually have this saying go through our heads, which is the idea that all desire is the root of suffering, and all suffering is the root of greatness. And so the story, therefore, refuses to ask whether suffering should exist. Instead, it asks whether suffering can become the medium through which love, humility, courage, and understanding become possible. In that respect, Paradise Lost remarkably closes similar to like the Brothers Karamazov. It's kind of like Berserk, even Blood Meridian. It's that the illusion that pain itself possesses inherent meaning. Meaning emerges only through one's orientation towards suffering in reality. And the same fire that hardens pride may also refine humility. The same catastrophe that produces despair in one soul becomes compassion in another. And, for a writer, Milton offers a lesson that extends far beyond just theology. The greatest antagonist is not one who desires destruction for its own sake. The greatest antagonist sincerely believes that the world's deepest injustice lies in its refusal to recognize its own interpretation of reality. So Satan is terrifying not because he is monstrous, but because his logic remains intelligible at almost every step. One understands exactly why he refuses repentance, even while recognizing that every justification leads him further from the freedom he believes himself to be pursuing. And so by the poem's conclusion, one begins to suspect that Paradise Lost has never really been about heaven, hell, or Eden. It's been describing the hidden architecture of every human decision. Every choice, everyone's participation in reality contracts. Yeah, so rewind. And so by the poem's conclusion, one begins to suspect that Paradise Lost has never really been about heaven, hell, or Eden. Heaven and hell are not merely destinations awaiting humanity after death. They begin as habits of perception long before they become places.